A very good evening to you, and welcome to today's edition of Politics 101. It's Thursday evening in Guyana, in Buxton, Guyana, where we are coming from. But wherever you are, we want to welcome you down to Politics 101 and want to say thanks to everyone who was help to make this program a reality as we come down to the end of the year. I want to say thanks to everybody. Met some people today on the protest that they had in front of the building that is housing the National Assembly. People are out there protesting the PPP's attempt. So far, it's an attempt because I don't think that they have passed the law yet. They are debating today to change the law as it relates to the National Resource Fund, removing what has now become this popular word, the guardrails. I prefer to use the term the checks and balances on spending the oil money, to put it frankly. The Natural Resource Fund was put in place based on the Argentinian model. I myself have been very critical, we in the WP have been quite critical of the Argentinian model, not the model of itself, but the assumptions of the model, which is based on the view that third world people are kleptomaniacs and that we have to hide our own money from ourselves. And so they create this model. Our money is in a New York bank when it should be somewhere in the Bank of Guyana. And so we in the WP have been very critical of that aspect. But we recognize that in any society, which is going to handle monies that it never handled before, that there needs to be checks and balances. That's one. Two, look, money to Guyana, that kind of oil money that we're expected to get for Guyana, it's not just a matter of oil money coming in or money coming in. It's a matter of historical significance, since all of us who are visitors to this land, who came here in various circumstances, of course, the native Indians came first, and Europeans came looking for wealth. They brought Africans against their will. And when Africans forced their way out of slavery, other ethnic groups, East Indians, Indian Guyanese, Portuguese Guyanese, Chinese Guyanese came as replacement labor. So we all came here in different circumstances, under different circumstances. And we all made contributions towards changing our country from a place where you bought people and killed people in search of wealth. We changed that inhumane landscape into a human landscape. Africans, of course, through their blood and sweat, contributed tremendously. And others, other ethnic groups came and made their own contribution towards the humanization of Guyana. And so therefore, as we move into this patrimony that God has blessed us with, or that Mother Nature has blessed us with, whatever is your persuasion, this wealth that is coming is not a willy-nilly thing. It is wealth that is owed to all the ethnic groups who came here and sweated and died for us to be here today. Africans worked for 400 years, in Guyana case, 200 and odd years, without pay. Without pay. Amerindians were here before they were uprooted by the Europeans. Indian Guyanese came and worked for a pittance. And so we all were owed. Now God, our nature, has blessed us with this patrimony. All of us are entitled to it. Not just based on modern politics, based on the historical development of our society. Based not on whether one has a majority on parliament or a minority. This matter of our patrimony has deep roots, R-O-O-T-S, and perhaps R-O-U-T-E-S. If you think about the Exodus that they speak about in the Bible and that Bob Marley put so eloquently in song, you know, as we come through the roots of the Middle Passage, and as our Indian brothers and Chinese and Portuguese brothers cross and came here after 1838, our Amerindian brothers and sisters. And so that money there is our entitlement, all of us. And if all of us are entitled to it, it must be treated in that way. In the sense that all of us should have a say on how that money is being spent. I'm arguing that oil money coming to Guyana is not a matter of Dutch disease and French disease and all the other things. Those things are important. I don't begrudge the economists who come up with those things. But I am locating our oil money in something deeper and wider and more profound, and locating it in our history of denial. All of us, Africans and Indians and Portuguese and Chinese, have been denied. And now that we have discovered this wealth, I'm arguing that common understanding of the notion of historical equity should say to any government, this is one thing we ought to tear party away from. And the bill that was placed there by the coalition government, I think went a long way towards ensuring that a white cross section of our representatives has a say on how that money is spent. In this bill, the PPP is attempting to remove the rest of us from administering this very important historical task. And it has appointed itself as the only stakeholder that ought to be at the table. And so it is torn down the checks and balances that involve the Press Association, the Bar Association, the churches, the youth organizations. It is decided that those organizations do not represent human beings. And so they have no right to be there at the table. And in one fell swoop, if and when they pass this bill, they will be removing all the rest of us from having anything to do with this moment of correction. And by moment of correction, I mean the coming of oil wealth is a moment of correction, correcting the ills that were meted out to our different ethnic groups as we try to hold the wild coast and turn it into a very tame place that we can call Guyana today. And now one party speaking for one section of the population has decided the rest of us have no place at the table. It's a historical insult. It's a cultural insult. I'm saying I'm not downplaying the economics of it. People can make that argument. Those who are making the argument about economics and quote unquote democracy. I'm talking about a wider democracy. I'm talking about a democracy. I'm talking about a democracy that is much deeper than what they're talking about. And so tonight we want to talk about that issue. As I said, we were out there. Some of us were out there today, as you've been seeing on the clips that are being played. We were out there. People were saying that, well, there weren't plenty people out there and so on. I pointed out that, you know, protests should not always be seen in numbers. This is a start. And those people out there were not called out there by political parties. They were there on their own. And the parliamentarians came out and joined us. And persons like myself, Aubrey Norton was there, out there giving solidarity. But these were people who decided on their own, ordinary women mostly, but there were also some men there. And Glenn Lal was there, as you see in the caption there. And it is for the organizations to decide what they want to do, whether they want this to be business as usual, whether they want this to be just another bill that's passed by the PPP. I noticed that a number of civil society organizations are calling for a delay in the passage of the bill. And I just want to point out to those civil society organizations that we are not dealing with a government that responds to reasonable argument and reason. If we were dealing with such a government, it would be good to make a call in the newspapers and leave it at that, and leave it to the conscience of the government. But this government does not have that kind of conscience. And so therefore the organizations, civil society organizations and others have to decide whether they will move towards other forms of pressure. You know, in Guyana, they try to tell us there are only two things you can do in politics. You can either go into parliament and sit down there and take blows and let the opposition vote you down, or you can turn to violence. And I'm saying those two extremes are never going to bring change. Violence is not going to bring change. And going and sitting meekly in parliament and debate and then voting down will not bring change. Somewhere in between those two extremes are a range of options open to us as Guyanese people to bring pressure to bear on a hard-nosed government. What people say, stick blocker them is. This is a hard-nosed government. Some will say a hard-nosed government that is playing hardball. And so therefore we have to be very creative about how we move forward. I'm saying every other thing that we have been talking about that is wrong in this country, whether it is the economic discrimination in wealth that is being distributed, monies that are being distributed, whether it's the knocking off of opposition people, whether it's the jailing of opposition people, all of those things in the final analysis flow into this issue of our wealth. Because the monies that are being distributed to the constituencies of the PPP are monies they expect to recoup from the money that is in the National Resource Fund, the Natural Resource Fund. They've already mortgaged that money. And now they're open to get in there and to take that money. So that money will be used to finance PPP's pet project, to buy votes, because that $250,000 they're giving to Indian Guyanese sugar workers, is to bribe them to buy their votes. So if and when this law is passed, it will allow the PPP to use that money in there to buy votes, to use that money in there to give to their friends in the private sector, to use that money in there to buy hardware, guns, and whatever else, to give to their phantoms and their friends in the security forces to use against opposition people. All roads lead to this resource fund. That is why it's a fundamental law. So that's my opening commentary tonight as we lay the stage for our conversation. In between all of our politics, we are dealing with life, and we're dealing with love. The passing of Bishop Tutu, Desmond Tutu, the passing of our own Justin Long, quiet, full of dignity, quiet pride, reminds all of us of where we came from, never wearing our achievement on our forehead. I've never heard her shout or raise her voice. Quiet dignity is what she represents. Her name is not well known, not because she did not do well-known things, but because she never pushed herself to the limelight. Whether you're talking about education, or you're talking about culture as far as music is concerned, or you're talking about the roots, R-O-O-T-S, R-O-U-T-S of the African, coming across the Middle Passage to the so-called New World, linking their hands and their hearts across plantations and across waters to build what is known as the Pan-African movement, starting at the turn of the 20th century, when Henry Sylvester Williams in Manchester, England, hosted in 1900 that significant first Pan-African Congress. He was a Trinidadian barrister, and launching what is known as the Pan-African movement that will serve as a beacon not only of struggle but of freedom, as they went back in 1944 to Manchester, England, this time under the patronage of another great West Indian, George Padmore, launching African independence and Caribbean independence. The Pan-African movement, Sister Jocelyn Long helped to make it a reality here in Guyana. And we're also in a season of Thanksgiving, the birth of our Christ. Those of us who are Christians and are not Christians, because Christmas goes beyond religion and faith. And that in this season, as we give thanks for the birth of the greatest revolutionary that walked the face of the earth, he who turned his face against all forms of oppression, whether it was in the house of the Lord or whether it was outside the house of the Lord, Jesus stood tall. And in this time, one of the great institutions of our time, the People's National Congress, elected its leader in what is the most open election in all of Guyana's post-colonial history, the most open election, and electing a new leader, the son of the working class, not a lawyer, not a doctor. Many before him of his ilk tried for that leadership, were denied. One, Robert Corbin, achieved it, but the pressures, the social pressures, social pressures. We talk a lot about ethnicity in this country, but we don't talk about the social pressures. Who should govern? Who should rule? Who should be the leader? And Aubrey Norton has been elected. Whether we like Norton or we don't like Norton, whether we like the PNC or don't like the PNC, it's a significant moment in our history. So we're trying to bring all of that together tonight in our conversation. We have chosen a panel that is broad-based. Hamilton Green has been there from the beginning in 1953, a young man then, but almost 70 years later, he's still with us. And when you've been in the thing for 70 years, you would have passed through all the torpedoes. You would have survived them. You would have had a chance to make your mistakes and correct them. And those which you were not able to correct, you were able to guide others so that they can correct them. You would have made your own contribution.
Dr. Hines, if I must intrude at this time, there's a situation developing in Parliament right now, as we speak, where the MPs are protesting against the Natural Resource Fund bill. I don't know if we can break it and bring it in before you continue with your program.
Please do.
Mr. Jones, I'm asking you to have members take your seat. Honorable Member, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, Honorable Member, you have 18 members on your feet. I am not in favor of your move for this bill to be sent up to select committee until I hear this debate. I'm asking you once again, if not, I will have to start calling on members. Honorable Member Mr. Jones, honorable members on the opposition, I am on my feet. I am on my feet, honorable members.
Put on the page.
I am on my feet, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Duncan, the placard. Honorable members, I'm asking that the honorable members, Ms. Halley, Mr. Duncan, Mr. Cox, Mr. Mahipal, Ms. Ferguson, to withdraw from the assembly. Honorable Member, Mr. Honorable Minister, you may proceed. Mr. Speaker, I rise, sir, to speak in support of the Natural Resources Fund Bill 2021. A bill, sir, that comprises the second installment of a two-part set of legislation aimed at improving significantly the governance of Guyana's new and emerging oil and gas sector. It would be recalled, sir,
Honorable Minister, I'm taking a short suspension.
And there you have it. You know, in a majoritarian system, when you're in the opposition, your choices are so limited. You know, it's quite lonely in there and brutal as an opposition in a majoritarian system. I'm staying away from saying a majoritarian democracy because I don't want to confuse people. That is what we have in Guyana is not a majoritarian democracy. It's a majoritarian system that is being carried out in an authoritarian manner. And when you are a majoritarian, when you're an opposition in a majoritarian system, you are depending on the conscience. You're depending on the sense of fair play. You're depending on the sense of nationalism on the part of the majority. But here we have a slight majority coming out of a questionable election that is behaving as though it is a majority of 100%. And so therefore, life is brutal in a parliament like that. And so you have to resort to what we are seeing there. Ultimately, what would change that kind of mindset in our National Assembly is what happens outside of the National Assembly. Like I said, those organizations that have come out and saying the government overstepping, they have to step out of the shadows and come out into the open space and let their voices register there. Harde's government, a brutal government, only listens to the power of the people. Let me bring in my panel because I've had my say in trying to set the stage for what we're going to talk about tonight. Hamilton Green, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I mean, let me start with you. You know, I know you're a student of history. You recognize the importance of historical development, and you were accused of walking out on the PNC, a party that you helped to found. Another member who's close to me was also accused wrongfully, I think. You and AUC Guyana were accused of walking out on the PNC. And I answered on Mr. Guyana's, well, not on his behalf, but on my own behalf, but as a comrade of his, I answered and I knew that you would follow suit, and you did. Clear up for our young people, our younger audience, what happened that caused you to be, let me put it blankly, thrown out of the PNC?
But first, David, let me make it clear. I never and could never walk out of a party I sacrificed to build from the time I was a teenager. Second, I was the victim of a kangaroo court set up by Mr. Hoyt, who seemed to be more concerned with the asseverations of a certain gentleman from the deep south instead of listening to the voices of reason of people in the political arena and his party who understood what was happening in this country. I was expelled by this kangaroo court and never left the party and could never leave the party. I want to make it clear there's a letter which was published last week which set out the case succinctly of what happened. So I need to clarify that point. I never walked out of the party. And in fact, I formed the GGG so that those persons who were pushed out could have a home and a voice. And that, in fact, was the case. And when Mr. Hoyt passed, within hours, I was back home to the People's National Congress. May I add this, which you did not answer? I just heard the raucous, as some may say, in Parliament, and the Speaker allowing the Minister persist with this nefarious, undemocratic, vulgar bit of legislation. I looked, and the tragedy is the sacrifices made by our ancestors to be free and to be part of a society where we understand decency and democracy. These people in the present government are using those very institutions that we fought so hard to get. Fought the British, fought imperialism. They're using those very institutions to attempt, and this is what is happening, to attempt to re-enslave some Guyanese. And it must be resisted with the strength of a slave and the vigor of those who are around today. David, the big task is to educate our young people so we can have the intellectual and physical muscle to agitate so that our liberation can become a reality. And I hope that wiser counsels will prevail.
And I'm very glad, Hami, that you put it in historical perspective, because we've got to go there. We live in the kind of society, and you are older than I am, and you have been there longer than myself and Deon and Lincoln, who are waiting in the wings to contribute. And we have to be blunt about it. We live in a society in which different ethnic groups came at different points and made their contribution and suffered at different points and in different ways. When something like this, like the patrimony that will take us out of poverty, take us out of want, take us out of dependency, and now for one organization representing one of those groups to arrogate unto itself the right to decide, then you are hitting at something deep. And people like yourself and Lincoln and Deon, as you say, have a duty to lay this thing in historical context, because they want us to talk just economics and they want us to talk just systems. And I like what you said. The institutions that are there are institutions that our people died for, paid with their labor and their blood and their sweat, and they're turning these institutions now into instruments of re-enslavement. And your point is well taken. God bless you. Lincoln, let me bring you in. Lincoln Lewis. Lincoln, here he comes. Brother, good night. I have laid out the context in which I think our discussions should go tonight. Hami, I think, as expanding it. Speak in general terms about the significance of what the PPP is doing in that building tonight.
Let me say to you that our Constitution did not speak about participation. Our Constitution today speaks about establishing, speaks to an inclusionary democracy, my people's involvement in the decision-making processes of the state. It is not participation. The PPP is representing a 51% in parliament. There's a 49% out there whose voices the opposition represents. The opposition is speaking for that 49%, and they must be allowed not only to speak, but their recommendations and positions must be seriously considered. They're calling tonight for a bill to go to a select committee. The government is taking the position, adamant on the position, that they want to pass it. Why is it that they want to do? They are flying in the face, their actions are flying in the face of what we call of the constitution that they speak so much about when they are in opposition. Let me say, those people who are elected to office, we have to hold them accountable. The money that they want to spend is not the money belong to them. The money belong to me too, and I must have a say in what I'm doing, say in the money, how the money is being spent. And I can only have that say through my representatives in the National Assembly. And I will urge them that they consider those type of things. I do not expect, what is happening there is something that is the PPP is known to be doing. Run bills through Parliament, and the only time that they will consider talking with you is when some bill may require a 2/3 majority to be passed in the National Assembly. I hope that this exercise here teaches the opposition to learn from this here and to take bills to the Parliament, that issues of this nature must be done through a 2/3 majority vote in the National Assembly. Things like the budget, the national budget, must be done that way, which will force this government to consider what ought to be done for communities that they decided to be marginalized.
What ought to be done for marginalized community? Lincoln, let me get in Deon here. Deon, what for you is the significance of what we are witnessing this evening?
I mean, its significance lies in the fact that it seems to be the first robust attempt at resistance to the excesses of the PPP since elections took place last year. And I think it's a new wave, and that wave would have been brought about based upon the new sense of purpose and pride and everything that surrounds the elections of the recent elections of the PNCR. And it's really important because the speaker in suspending Parliament, it points to the fact that, and it should instruct the members of Parliament who are there and whom we understand will not be shuffled or removed or whatever, that their actions and their willingness to challenge and to be robust in their defense of democracy and of everything else that should be in the Parliament is important. And that their actions there will propel others who are somehow feeling so devastated and basically not feeling that energy to move forward and to protest, that it will reverberate with them that something new is in the air, and that this movement can begin where people begin to fight again for what is right. Because we cannot allow the PPP, if we allow them to get away with this, and they've gotten away with a whole lot already, we are doomed. because we know that Jack Dio is a kleptomaniac. That once the PPP puts its hands on the monies that are there, that we are going to be excluded. African Guyanese in particular are going to be totally excluded. And even Indo-Guyanese who are not part of the PPP clique are going to be totally excluded from benefiting from that which you have called a new era, a rebirth of something that is giving us back from that suffering that we have gone through historically. And we really cannot allow that to happen. And I was even pleased that people were outside of Parliament demonstrating that this must not happen. And we have to make this a massive movement so that they will understand that people in Guyana are once again coming alive and are willing to fight for what is right for them.
Hammy, get back in here. In your long involvement in politics, Hammy, you do not only know your party, but you know the other party because you've had to tangle with them for almost 70 years. Why is it they're fighting so hard to pass this bill? What is it? Tell our audience. What is it that is not so, they think that it is not so obvious to the rest of us? Your audio, Ami.
But I think I got the essence of what you're asking me. The truth of the matter is that what we see happening today with this all money is merely a repeat of an attitude by a group of people who believe they have a God-given right, even though they don't believe in God, to exploit the rest of the population and to ignore the sacrifices made by those who civilized the entire coastal belt. And what we are seeing today is manifest. You made the point. This bounty must and should be shared and enjoyed by all Guyanese. And what is significant today is that there are clear efforts to keep those of us who dare to speak, who dare to articulate what is happening, who dare to stimulate our young people to action. They want to silence them. They've sent out, I don't know what it is, for David Hines, other people, to have them locked up because people like David Hines are speaking the truth. Burke is speaking the truth, and Ben Scoff is speaking the truth. But they're using what is happening now, kind of police state, to keep people like you quiet. I asked a group recently, what did people like David Hines say that warrant police intervention? One of the kith and kin went to Bibis and said to Indians they must arm themselves. He was rewarded with several special contracts. So we have what was characterized in an old American play, different strokes for different folks, a complete antithesis of the democracy we say we have. But I would like to preach not this word democracy because that's a chameleon word for some people.
Yes.
We must seek decency and justice. And we're not seeing that, particularly when it comes to money and the greed of certain people whose only concern, whose only mission is to accumulate wealth for themselves and family. And what is going to happen very soon, in spite of the efforts being made, some of their own supporters of this government will soon realize that they are not the beneficiaries of the big bucks. And we need to be prepared to go to those areas to give examples of where 100 million is being spent and small communities are given token things like bridges, special pensions, and so, and not being part of the big bucks. This is our task today,
Yes.
and we must continue it relentlessly.
Lincoln, we have made the prognosis. We know the beast that we are dealing with. We are not dealing with people who are driven by a sense of decency, as Ami says, a sense of nationalism, a sense of fairness. Are we on the cusp of a movement? Do we need a movement to bring back this country to its balance? Lincoln.
Let me say to you that the actors, let me preface it by saying that there are actors in the PPP, in the National Assembly, who ought not to be there. Let me give you an example. Mr. Jagdew has now become what we call a nuisance to this society. And he must be told. On so many words, he must be told. When Burnham died, Hoyt took over as president. He was given an opportunity to stamp his authority, put his own stamp on leadership and where he wants this country to go. Mr. Jagdew, the Constitution says a president has 2 terms, and the spirit and intent of that Constitution means that when you are elected president, when you demit office, you go into sunset. This man has foisted himself on this nation. What you see in the National Assembly is just what it is. He's the architect of it. What you see happening here today. We have to make sure that the Constitution is respected. I believe this is enough, what is taking place here today, that can move us to the point where we have a new movement. Not a movement of political parties, but as a movement of the citizenry of this country, where people will say what they would like to see as a government. This man ought not to be in the National Assembly, not to be part of the spirit and intent of the Constitution did not say that you can come back as a minister. All the things that happened that led to that 2 terms, it is indicative that when a president demits office, he goes into sunset. Ramutar gone. Why you don't go? Granger gone. Why you don't go? We are not, this country is not his personal property and we are his subjects. And these are things that we need to take seriously. These guys are not going to stop unless the people stop them. The Constitution will not be respected until the people cause them to respect the Constitution. And these are, I believe, a movement that can move, a movement of citizens can move to bring the change that we yearn for in this society. Thank you.
Deon Abrams, you're a younger man. You have been quite a forceful voice for more revolutionary kind of action, to use a word that is now out of fashion. But as a younger man, do you think that we are seeing the beginnings of a movement here?
I hinted to that, David, but before we go to that,
yes,
I want to point out one thing, that the kleptocracy that we see being established here and the attempt at regaining that control, if we reflect on what transpired during the 23 years, particularly with sugar and the European fund that was supposed to help the sugar industry regenerate itself. And Jagdew and the PPP took all that money and we never knew where it went, what happened to it. And even people within the management of the sugar industry could not raise questions about where the money was, what was being done with it, and so on. So when we're talking about oil and the resources that are to be garnered from the oil industry, we already know that we are in for big trouble if this bill is allowed to be passed. You mentioned that I'm more for a revolutionary kind of action. You, in your introduction, uh, try to be done violence and all of that. But when you're dealing with a government that is prone to violence, and the whole old saying of violence begets violence, I don't know how you factor that in, because we have seen the propensity of the PPP to kill, to maim, to throw people in jail, all kinds of acts of violence against people of this society. And you seem to be saying that we must sit back and take it. I don't know how we're going to factor that in. But for me, we have to find a way to make them understand that we ain't gonna take it, right? However people want to express that, I will not try to hold them back. You see, I will not try to hold them back, because the PPP is not one that holds itself back when it needs to take action. And what we have seen in the parliament and what we've seen outside the parliament, I am hoping that it will grow. And once it begins to grow, then the PPP, we will see the true colors of them. And we must not allow them to brutalize us without us fighting back in whatever form it takes. And that is my take on it.
And thank you there for your contribution. Just to say, you might have looked away a little bit. Anti-violence does not mean sit back and take. The great Mahatma Gandhi said, if I had a choice between cowardice and violence, I will choose violence. I'm saying that the two options of violence and cowardice are not the only two options. You and I seem to be on the same page with that. I continue to believe that violence ought not to be an option for us. Ethnic violence destroys societies. And I will never, never implicitly or explicitly urge followers to opt for violence as a first option. I think it's a non-starter. And so I'm saying that between violence and cowardice, there is a whole range of options open to our people. Let's move on. Ami, let me bring you back in here. And I want you as an elder to address this question of violence. Because you've been around, you've seen the 60s, you've seen, you're a student of history, so you would have studied other ethnic societies. Your view on violence as a political option. Ami?
David, I'm sorry.
I was asking you to comment.
Internet or what?
Yes, Ami seems to be having some problems. I was asking you for your view on the use of violence as a form of settling political scores.
Then you can hear anything.
Are you getting me?
My internet is terrible. I can't understand a word you're saying.
Oh my. We seem to be getting
It's
some
static at my end.
We seem to be having some problems with the audio there. Lincoln, let me bring you in. We've just had the election of a new leader of the PNC. It was an election that captured the imagination of the larger base of the opposition. It has captured the interests of the government. It has captured the interests of the international community. How significant is the election of Aubrey Norton as PNC leader?
Let me start by saying the election of Norton, if we put it in context, Norton succeeded David Granger. David Granger leadership has taken the PNC into the doldrum. The support base and even the 49% that the opposition represents in the National Assembly today, that 49%, a significant portion of that 49%, disagreed with David Granger's leadership. He never stood up to fight fight or defend his base, and for that reason, the base, the PNC base, was saying, "Look here, we want somebody who's going to stand up with us and fight the PPP." What you're seeing in the National Assembly today, under David Granger leadership, you would not have seen it. I do not believe, well, I don't know if Norton has an hand in it, but I believe that the parliament, the opposition parliamentarians have rid themselves of David Granger at this time. So they behave in a different way. On Norton.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
On Norton election, I believe that if they would have, Dr. Reed used to say, you put up a broomstick, the party must support. If you had put up a broomstick and you put fight on it, and that broomstick out there, the membership of the party would have rallied behind that broomstick. I said that to say this to you, that Norton came out approximately 7 months ago and say, "I'm the man for the job, and I'm prepared to fight for you," and the people rally around Norton. Now that he has won the leadership, I've observed that one of the first things that happened is that while the diplomatic community may have an interest in what's taking place, I believe they always had an interest. In the past, I believe they always were invited to at least the opening of the PNC congresses. I was invited before, and I knew that they were there. So with them sending congratulations and what have you, I believe it's a normal thing in the throes of politics. But the reaction of the PPP with a cartoon and then Mr. Jack View involvement, what they should do is to learn from the PPP, from the PNC. The PNC has to open up a new chapter in the history of party election, politics and election. Open it up, let everybody fight. In the case of the PPP, you've had one where the most recent one was the one where the current president was appointed. According to them, they say Central Committee or Jungle was bullied, and it's bullied to the point where the current president was made the presidential candidate. In the case of the PNC, they have opened up to what we call they have opened up to the opening up to debates and for primary, for people to run. Now they're gone and they open up and fight in the open. That is what the transparency that we're talking about, and that is what this society has learned from. And I hope that the PPP come. What they have done.
What for you is the significance of Aubrey Norton's election as leader of the PNC? Is Deon Abrams with us?
He get knocked off. He'll be back in.
All right. Is Hamilton Green with us?
The static is less pronounced now, but I gather you're speaking about Norton's
Yes,
elevation
Norton's
to
election. What's the significance
of the PNC.
yes. What is the significance of Norton's election?
It's propitious, it's good. And as we said in the 60s, we should now walk a new road. And Norton has experience. I'm sure he will get support of the masses and others in his quest to change certain things in the party and in the country of which we are a part. I am confident that his election also established the democratic credentials of the People's National Congress. And it is a good omen, good augury, and we must all rally behind him. It's a long road, a difficult road. We're dealing with evil forces within and without. And I believe it is important that he cultivates all sectors of the society and also reach out to the international community, who must now understand that the people they thought restored democracy is now breaking it, fracturing it, and tearing it to pieces, and making a mockery of decency and democracy. That is his task, and all right-thinking people, irrespective of race, color, or creed, must rally behind this young man so we get out of the darkness and the light of day beckons us.
I mean, you said that your show will change some things that needs change. What are some of those things that you think that need change? One or two things that you think he should tackle immediately. I hope you heard me there. Did you hear me there, Annie? Apparently, Hamilton Green has not heard me there. Is Deon Abrams back with us? Is Deon Abrams back with us, Mr. Operator? Is Amy hearing me? It apparently not. We seem to be experiencing some problems. Lincoln, are you there? Your audio, Lincoln. Yeah, Lincoln Lewis. Should Aubrey Norton go to Parliament?
I believe that the first thing that we need to do is to start put the machinery in place within his party.
Yeah, but before we go, I'm asking you a straight question.
No. What I'm saying, the issue of going to the National Assembly.
Yes.
I would like, from my perspective.
Yes.
He has just been elected leader. I'm saying that the first thing, his first task, is to put the machinery in the.
Yes. But ultimately,
after he has done that, then he tackled the National Assembly. Program, agenda, and people.
All right.
That's what
so you're still hedging, Lincoln. You're not giving a definitive yes or no. Should Aubrey Norton, whether tomorrow?
No, I do not want to. I am saying from my perspective. Yeah. My perspective.
Right.
Looking at what the Herculean task in front of Aubrey is to put machinery in place and raise money to all that machinery.
So you're not giving your view on whether he should go to Parliament. Let me try to see if I'm more successful.
It is not a decision for me to make, but I'm going to tell you something. As leader of the
it's one of the
what I think as leader of the party. As leader of the party, you should start now to build that party. Because I'll tell you what, the machinery that drives the National Assembly has to be the political parties. And if you can't get that right, then the National Assembly will not perform as it should, regardless of who you have in there. Right? We have to take this thing in its stages, and we have to use the components in the entire train to bring the results that we're looking for. I believe that
green or
the issue. Huh?
I'm trying to get the operator's attention to see whether Deon or Hami Hami, are you hearing me?
Deon is not back as yet. Still working on
Hami,
him.
are you hearing me?
Sorry?
Should Aubrey Norton
The disturbances
go into Parliament?
have returned, on my set at least.
Should Aubrey Norton go into Parliament, Hami?
But I'm hearing, but I can't decipher what is being said because of the static. I hope it's not somebody's.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, Hami, but you seem not to be hearing me.
Repeat what you said, David.
No, I'm asking if Aubrey Norton should go into Parliament, or he should stay out of Parliament.
I have confidence that Aubrey has enough experience and wisdom to take us out of troubled water into calm seas and victory at the next elections. That is my prognosis, my hope, my dream, and whatever energy I have left will be exercised towards achieving that objective. Recently, the Central Executive ordained a group of us as Council of Elders. That's a move in that right direction. As elders, we'll advise from our own experiences. But I think of greater importance is for us to stimulate an interest and excitement among the young people, some who are not yet entitled to vote. Because at the end of the day, these are the people who will either be the victims or the victims of bad governance. And their role is vital. And those of us who are elders, middle-aged, must not ignore the importance of getting them on board, letting them know what is at stake. I've spoken to some of these young people, David, and the problem is they're confused. One young man told me that all they're interested in is money. And the other people are aware of this defect in the psyche of our young people, and they're going to use it. Our job is to educate them, let them know the history of this country, and that they must play a part in restoring its integrity and ensuring that the bounty from oil is not dissipated, but is used to further the education, health. Today's Starbuck News published a letter which I suggest people should read, and yesterday's Starbuck News had an interesting editorial dealing with this vulgarity that is now before the Parliament.
Hami, we just lost Professor Long, who was a stalwart in our society. You were quite close to her. Give our audience a sense of her significance and importance.
Professor Long's demise is a monumental loss to this country, the Pan-African movement, and to the wider world of which we are a part. She was calm, quiet, unpretentious. And I was fortunate to be present at, I believe, the last public recital she gave. And as one who was taken before the pianoforte by her mother, Aunt Ivy, I My head grew when I heard her pounding away on those keys with passion and precision. And my wife told me a moment ago they have recovered that recording, and I hope we can play it because I've never heard that bit of music played so beautifully. At the other level, she was the initiator of the Pan African movement in Guyana, and I hope those who are around will do what is necessary, not only to perpetuate her memory, but to put in place systems that her good work will never be lost. I knew Professor Long from the time she was a child. People may not know, I knew them when the parents had a bungalow in James Street or Boys Town, just a few yards away from my father's drugstore. So for me, it's a personal as well as a great loss. And I hope that we do not allow that loss without taking the gloss of her work into account.
Um, Lincoln, you have had
I'm
some
here.
interaction with Professor Long. Thoughts or significance or contributions to Guyana?
I met Professor Long a long time ago when she was Deputy Vice Chancellor, I believe, at the university, and George Walcott was the Chancellor. We had our own little talk on the side from the council meetings that I used to be attending at that time. But our relationship deepened. She's a strong woman, strong in the sense that she's not ashamed of her cultural deepness and her preferences. I remember during her lifetime while she was active, there were some mornings that my telephone, my landline at home don't normally ring. But when it rings very early in the morning, and I pick up, there are a few people will call me, and one of those persons would have been Professor Long. She will call me and she will say, Brother Lincoln. And she will start and she said, can you come over, let's talk. I will remember for the fights she has organized. And one fight I remember I want to remind people of is the fight to retain that piece of land that on the mall that was assigned to the African community when the city council was making all effort to take it away to give it to somebody else. She organized very quietly to get all the voices in the African community to come together. Ami was there to really fight in defense of that. I will miss her. I will miss that voice. She has been a strong woman. She has been a sister, and she has been a leader. May your soul rest in peace.
Let me get your thoughts, Lincoln, on the railroading of Mr. Jordan through the courts yesterday, the astronomical bail that was set. Your thoughts?
What was done there yesterday was not surprising. That is how the PPP operate. And I am happy to some large extent that the defense and the people around Jordan were not taken by surprise. They were prepared to some extent to deal with it. The PPP will tell you that the court is just, when you go to the court, is just unfair, that there is no political interference. They will tell you that the PNC is the person, but it's happening under them, under their watch. They meant that what they must do is to put Gordon behind bars, even if it's for 2 years. And I hope that the people who are doing these things, who are colluding with them, remember that when they come off of the bench and wherever they come from, or the public offices, they got to come back to the same communities and live. They got to come back. And they're expecting all of us to lead them, to hold them, to open our arms and welcome them. We cannot, as a people, be only driven by money. You only be driven by public office.
Lincoln,
We have to do something.
Sarah had initiated similar accusations against members of the PPP for Pradoville, which is selling those lands below the market value. Sarah had begun a movement. Some of them had started to pay back. The new government came in. It closed down Sarah. Now they are charging Mr. Jordan with the same offense. I remember it, Ashley Singh and others were passed through court. They were sent off on self-bail. Mr. Jordan, for a similar charge.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something, David. When that issue of what's his name of BK, when that issue came to the privatization board, I was a member of the board. The highest bid was around $2 million, $2 billion. And the company that made the bid, the company was the head office for this company, or registered office for this company, was in Pago Store in Regent Street. I was on the board. I questioned the validity of this company because I had looked at the bid and I looked at the money that they were asking for. And every other person at the end of the meeting, before the meeting ended, agreed that the better of the bids was BK. And they agreed that they're going to lease it at least purchase arrangement for less than 2 billion Guyana dollar. Right? It was less. It was a smaller amount than what you see in the media now. Something is wrong in this society. The private sector representative voted that BK get this property. And the private sector representative at the time was David Yankana. The consumer representative voted for it, argued that he must get it. The minister and the prime minister were at the meeting. They agreed that BK had a better bid and he must be given. All these people, and let me say to you, when BK was given that, when I argued at the board for that BK to get that company to get that property, I never seen that man before. I saw him nearly a year after. For the first time I saw the man was at a funeral on West Coast Demerara. It was the father of John Lewis and John and Gregory Lewis when he was buried. So I'm going to tell you this. They will find something to demonize anybody who look like you or look like me or solve the people. You better understand that. Or solve the condition. That's what they want to do.
Let me bring you in on the question of Mr. Jordan. What do you think they're trying to do with that Jordan case? He's not hearing me. He's not. You have to unmute yourself, Ami. There we go. What are your thoughts on the Winston Jordan case? He's not hearing me. We're having some difficulty with his audio tonight. I think we are coming up on program time. So Lincoln, your closing thoughts, and then we'll get Ami's closing thoughts.
I guess that we are in for difficult times. The song beat over the years by the PPP in the media. It has corrupt those song bites and those beats have corrupted democracy to a very large extent. And if we want to continue or we want to prevail, then it requires us holding hands and crusade. My call is to all the non-governmental organizations. I want them to know that politics is from the womb to the tomb. As somebody said, from the cradle to the grave. It will determine where the next baby born and under what conditions. I believe that we will have to stand up to make sure that we defend what is justly ours. The resources of this country, and we need to give, let me repeat it, we need to give to the opposition a program and an agenda that they can go to the National Assembly, fight in there while we fight outside. I want to thank the viewers for listening, and I want to thank you, David, for inviting me.
Good night. Some closing thoughts. If we can get Ami in on some closing thoughts. In the meantime, Mr. Operator, please stand by to give us an update on what's happening in Parliament as we go out. Ami, some closing thoughts? We still can't get Mr. Green's audio to work. If the operator is with us, can you please come in and give us a report on what's happening there at Parliament? Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, Dr. Hines, the Parliament is now about to resume. The opposition MPs are still on the floor. They're still in the dome protesting. The bell just rang, so they're supposed to be resuming now, and so we're going to see what's going to happen from there. But the protest continues. They're not going to move from the Parliament. They're still protesting against the bill, and there should be some interesting movements coming out from the Parliament in terms of how the Speaker is going to deal with this new development. I don't know how he's going to deal with it, but
to keep up the protest as a form,
right,
from moving forward.
Right, correct. So the Parliament just resumed. Let us see exactly what's going to happen now.
Yes, take us
right now.
Take us to the floor and see what's happening there. As we await the operator taking us to the floor of the National Assembly, the opposition parliamentarians are doing one of the few things that is open to them, and that is to delay the passage of this bill by ensuring that the debate does not go on, taking protests into the National Assembly. It is their right to do so. The government has not been listening to all the voices that have been calling for a stay on the bill. sending the bill to a select committee so that that committee could take another look at it. Here we are. Here we are. Mr. Operator, yes, there we go. Ashley Singh is on the floor. Is that an old clip or is it live? Is it live or is it an old clip? They've resumed. The opposition wants the bill to go to a select committee. A select committee is a temporary committee.
Legislation critical for the governance of Guyana's new and emerging oil and gas sector. Mr. Speaker, this bill comes before this House after a robust debate on the local content bill. And it perhaps is of tremendous significance that the bill comes as it does after the debate on the local content bill. I say so, sir, because there are 2 or 3 critical issues that leapt to my attention during the course of the local content bill, and which I believe, sir, are absolutely critical to the understanding of the public and parliamentary understanding of the context within which this Natural Resource Fund bill is today being considered before the National Assembly. Sir, it could not have escaped any of our notice. The presentations made during the course of the debate on the local content bill, when in particular,
There we have it. The opposition members preventing Ashley Singh from speaking.
Sir, during the course of our debate during the debate on the Natural Resources Fund bill, it would be recalled that Mr. Kemp, the honorable member, Mr. Kemraj Ramjatan, waxed lyrically on the importance. It would be recalled, sir, that Mr. Ramjatan waxed lyrically on the importance of opposition input into the examination of the local content bill. The honourable member, Ms. Annette Ferguson, argued fervently on the subject of excessive ministerial involvement in the local content bill. Sir, these 2 points are of absolutely critical importance for reasons.
Well, there you have it. The opposition members are causing a ruckus there in Parliament. Nothing new. Dr. Jagan used to do that. He would throw down the mace, he would bang on the table and all that kind of stuff. It's when you're in the opposition, that's what you're left with in Parliament. Well, we'll have to see what happens there. We have come to program time, so okay, here we go. We'll have a few more minutes. No teeth in bill. Tomorrow night we're going to have Cameron Ramchitan, Roysdale Ford, David Patterson on to talk about what's happening there tonight from the bill in perspective. We're also going to have the newly elected chairman of the KMC, Kevin on, along with the vice chairman or vice chairpersons. So that's tomorrow night. In the meantime, we're looking at what's happening there in the National Assembly. We're seeing live the opposition utilizing the tool at their disposal. No teeth in bill.
The replication of the capital and the convening of the election. So instead of respecting the consequences of the confidence motion, and instead of respecting the constitution of Canada,
so here we have this what's happening there on the floor of Parliament. It's not taking time, so we will have to say tomorrow night, as I said, we're going to continue our coverage of this bill tomorrow night.
no defender.
Dr. Hines had just picked up the mace and run with it.
Okay, you understand that the parliamentarians have taken the mace, and so the speaker doesn't have his mace. Hey. I'm on the floor of Parliament. What is the speaker doing, Andrew?
Install. Take your own medicine. You're starting it. Nixon, you're starting it. And force through the parliament a national resources bill that impacts no defender. No defense bill. 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 No defense bill.
The act did not have any semblance of a governance structure.
Talk your shit.
Indeed, sir, the act vested all executive power and authority in a single individual.
Confusion in the National Assembly. Crisis in the National Assembly.
The Minister of Finance was granted power, was given the power to exercise over the oversight of the overall management of the fund, to approve the investment mandate of the fund, to invest, to approve the investment.
No defense bill.
To appoint the investment committee, to appoint the macroeconomic committee, to appoint the investment analyst, to determine the sustainable model, to determine the fiscal model, and therefore for the department
No defense bill.
was an absurd concentration of power
Yeah.
into a single
Yeah.
bucket among powerful APN Minister of Finance. And the concentration of that power in their Minister of Finance is by the first they are through Ireland and Black Ireland.
They got it, speaker. They got it, Ashley. They got it, Ashley. How far the progress bill. They got it, Ashley.
When they demonstrated a clear intent to steal the 2019 election.
Like, are you stealing the money? Stealing the money? No defense bill.
And so it's a common accident that this bill got the Parliament after the
Chaos. Crisis in the National Assembly with the passing of this new confident with this natural resource funds bill.
So additionally,
Crisis in the National Assembly.
to create a smoke screen.
The speaker being guarded. The speaker being guarded.
That there was some kind of governance and participation by civil society. So they established a public oversight and accountability.
Speaker being guarded, the miss.
But that, sir, was a mere smoke screen. Because if you examine the powers of that public, the functions of the public oversight and accountability committee, sir, that committee has no decision-making authority.
Guard me, Speaker.
The committee has no role to play in the governance of the fund in terms of making decisions or approving anything. The public accountability committee is no free that it was. So we play the role of monitoring and evaluation.
No defense bill.
Consultation. In other words,
That's the government today. Guard the finance minister.
in fact, just a passive mechanism for passive observation of the management of the fund, rather than a mechanism to exercise effective
We have to go. Tomorrow night we'll continue the coverage of this. We're going to have some of the MPs to deal with this issue. So we got to sign off now. We got to sign off now. We've got to sign off now. The drama continues there in the National Assembly. We're going to continue to cover the issue. Tomorrow night, I'm having on Kemrat Ramjatan, Royce Ford, David Patterson, Sherwin Holder, and a host of others. We're going to be talking about what transpired there tonight, and from all evidence, it's going to go through the night. We'll see what happens. But the members of parliament on the opposition side are using the tool at their disposal, and that is the tool of stalling the bill, of disruption, we will see what is the outcome of that protest action. But as I said at the beginning of the program, protests inside the House must be matched by protests outside of the House of Assembly. We shall see. Until tomorrow night, David Hines signing off until tomorrow night. Until tomorrow night. Bye now.
Please help keep Politics 101 on social media and broadcast television. If you are in North America, please donate via Cash App or PayPal.
If you are in Guyana and the Caribbean and don't have access to Cash App and PayPal, email your pledge to dhines6106@aol.com and we will direct you how to get your donation to us. Thank you in advance for your donation.